Wake up, wake up. It's already Wednesday of Super Bowl week. If you're on the West Coast, good morning. If you're in New Orleans right now, hey, stop by and say hi before you go to bed. Let's go right now. It's wake up.
Yeah, anyone heading to New Orleans, Larry, the struggle bus will be driving by to pick people up each and every night, getting closer and closer to the game. It's the parties that really start coming into focus on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night leading up to the game. It's an awful lot of fun for the people who are there, whether they be fans or media members. This is why you and I are a little upset. We wanted to be in New Orleans. I saw our friend Chase Sr. is walking around New Orleans. He, of course, also covers the Eagles. So, he has a reason to be there. Unfortunately, Larry, the 49ers screwed up our reason to be there. So you and I today will try to figure out a way for them to get back to the Super Bowl, which, is just down the street. Actually, try to cross the street from where they practice because Levi Stadium is going to have the next Super Bowl. Welcome to Wake Up. We're brought to you by Sam's Chowder House. It's great to have you here. Like and subscribe. And Larry, kind of a slow Super Bowl buildup. The NFL doesn't want a lot of news around other teams. They want people to start focusing on the game and on the matchup, but a very slow news week, especially around the 49ers. The only real, here's what we didn't have to talk about on Monday is the fact that their director of scouting and football operations, Josh Williams, has interviewed for the Jags general manager opening. We haven't talked much about Josh Williams, what he does well, what he does wrong. I don't think we really know. Maybe you do. You got a little bit better grasp on who he is. He's a longtime team employee. And look, the Jaguars, found a GM in San Francisco before, and they're knocking on Josh Williams's door right now.
And, he's a great guy. Josh and I went to the same high school. And so he's a San Ignatius Wildcat, though he's
Go get him cats. Fuji Simeon's not going to like that at all, Larry.
He's a really, really sharp guy. And he went to Columbia, graduated from Columbia. So he's got a pretty good head on his shoulders. And the Niners had been, promoting him aggressively. And I say that he's been with them for 14 years, so maybe not too aggressively, but recently they have been promoting him, and he got a promotion just a year ago, or just either this year or in camp. I forget exactly when it was, but I remember going up to him and saying, "Hey, man, congratulations!" And he's a bright bulb for sure. He's a really sharp young guy. He's a very smart guy. High character, and you got to remember that. Ethan Waugh, who was with the Niners, joined Trent Baalke in Jacksonville. And even after Jacksonville dumped Trent Baalke, they kept Ethan Waugh to basically run the search. So it's Ethan's search, and Ethan knows Josh from his days here in San Francisco. I hope it's a legitimate interview. Josh is a minority candidate, and there is the Rooney Rule has to be adhered to. But I hope their interest in him goes beyond the Rooney Rule. As far as you, the 49er fan watching or listening, how does it affect you? Well, the 49ers, it's funny. This was a story last year during the Super Bowl week, right around this time, where the Niners were being criticized for being too much a benefit of, too much. They've benefited too much in the eyes of the other teams by the minority hiring practices, incentives, and rules that were put in place a few years ago, where if a minority candidate gets hired away, you get a third-round draft choice. And the Niners have done this multiple times already, more so than every other team in the league, I think, combined. And they've picked up, I think, 2 or 3, Damon, third-round picks for their efforts.
Well, I think I don't know how you can. It was the Mike McDaniel hire to Miami that drove everybody crazy, because I don't think anybody looked at Mike McDaniel and ever thought, "Oh, he's a minority." So
Saleh also counted. Rand Carthon counted towards that. The executive that went to the Commanders with Adam Peters, I forget his name, but he also counted for that. So the Niners have had a bunch of third round draft choices coming back because of the minority hiring practices. But you know what? How could anybody speak out against it? I mean, you created a rule because you saw a problem. You have a team in the 49ers that's saying, "Hey, we see you working and we're going to respond by having more people of color in our process, by having more people of color in our building, and then they're going to get interviewed and hired away and we're going to take those third round draft choices." And people will be like, "Oh, well, they're overdoing it." Well, you know what? They're overdoing it in the what? In the process of doing the right thing. So I don't know that there's a pushback. I'm sure there are people out there that are like, "Hey, man, they're driven by the incentives." So, I mean, you don't know that. You're just assuming that. For all you know, they're driven to hire the very best people, and these are the very best people. I mean, I don't know, but the outside world has noticed that the Niners have continued to do this.
If they didn't hire the right person to begin with, how come all these people are not just satisfying Rooney Rule with interviews, but being the hire? So the 49ers obviously have a pipeline of talent that is coming through them. And if you're right, if Josh Williams were to become the Jaguars' next general manager, the 49ers would receive an additional third round compensatory pick in the upcoming NFL draft if that hire is made before the draft. So it's interesting.
Right.
So
you should root this on. I mean, even though I think the spirit of that rule is bogus. I don't like the spirit of that rule. I don't like anything where you tell me to hire somebody based on the color of their skin or anything other than their qualifications. To me, this is an example of racism. But you know what? At the same time, if the powers that be have deemed that for a short period of time, this is going to help even the playing field for candidates of all colors, then I guess it's something we should all be for. But I think people probably should stop ripping the 49ers for benefiting from their minority hires being hired away. And I'll just say firsthand, Josh is fully capable. Like, I don't know all the minority candidates that they hired and their qualifications and how they stand up, but Josh is an outstanding young scout. He really is sharp. For him, if he wants this job, I hope he gets it. And good for the Niners to have this many minority candidates. It shows that what Bill Walsh's wish was, Damon. Bill Walsh started the coaching fellowship program, that it's coming to fruition. It's coming to fruition. We have our Super Bowl correspondent in the green room right now, and I see him back there, and we have a Super Bowl correspondent, and he's back in the green room, and he's just tearing it up. I mean, we got booze back there. I think there's some pre-rolls on the table. I'm seeing billowing smoke. I feel like we just handed the green room to like Slayer or one of those like 80s metals bands that just starts throwing stuff around. No, I'm just joking. But we go out to New Orleans for our young Super Bowl correspondent from Super Bowl 59, who we're hoping is going to join us not just today, but maybe even Friday as well. If you recognize this last name, well, let's just bring him aboard. George Lund is in the house.
How are we?
Wait a second. Can I get him up on the screen? I guess I have to switch pictures here. Wait. There we go. Wait a second. I think I can. We're doing great, man. Good to see you. There we go. We get the triple box. George Lund, who is there covering the Super Bowl for the name of the
Blaze Radio.
Blaze Radio. And why don't you give Blaze Radio a quick shout out, George, and tell our audience about Blaze Radio before we get into Eagles Chiefs and a little breakdown. And of course, Damon Bruce, George Lund, Damon Bruce. And if you guys know that last name, this is John Lund's son, who goes to ASU and the great Walter Cronkite program there for young sports broadcasters. And George is still in school, but about to hit the media world by storm. He's going to be covering the the Cape Cod League next summer, or
Yeah.
this summer, I should say.
Are you covering the Cape Cod League, or are you
he's-
playing in the Cape Cod League?
Well,
Might
this
do a
is
little both. We'll see.
I coached this kid one time in Little League, so I wish he was playing in the Cape Cod League. I could puff out my chest and say yes, I've coached this kid to pro
all I
ball.
can tell you is I see that last name. I recognize the last name. I also recognize that face. I feel like I'm looking at John Lund in a time machine. Penciled, a terrible college kid mustache on John Lund, and here we are.
I was just on his show yesterday, and everybody was saying the same thing. But I don't know if I want that. I don't know if I want that just yet. I feel like I'm the better looking of the two.
There you are. There's no
Very
question.
Nice to meet you, George. How's New Orleans treating you so far?
Man, it's been an experience like no other. I mean, Radio Row is its own beast. And I mean, just the whole experience, the first 2 days. I mean, the first day was opening night, so it's when we go to the Caesar Dome. We see all the players on the field doing interviews, and then yesterday we had the media party, and that was pretty fun. I will say that New Orleans does the media party very well. I was very surprised with how well it was put together. I mean, there was about 5 different live performances, and it's right on the river where you can see the bridge. And then we've had our show the first 2 days, and we have some good guests coming on today for Blaze Radio, which is the student radio station of ASU. So it's made for an amazing few days, and then we get to maybe see Bourbon Street tonight. We have a little bit of a free night, so we might go explore New Orleans a little bit. But it's made for a really crazy experience. I mean, today is really jam-packed. Wednesday's the first day where everybody really comes in. We saw Pat McAfee come in to his show, so he's getting ready to start his show. I saw Jaden Daniels walking around. So a lot of good guests coming on our show, and a lot of people just walking around with flocks of people. One of my friends tried to get Jaden Daniels for a quick interview because he was an ASU guy, and just nope. 8 different dudes just surrounding him, would not let him anywhere near him. So it's been a pretty crazy 2 days.
Sounds about right. Everybody's doing their thing. You got the guys walking around from Zales Jewelers, right?
Yeah.
Wearing the Hall of Fame jackets. It's an awesome event, man. I'm so excited for you covering that thing. It's New Orleans is the best. Damon, John, and we all know that probably New Orleans is the best, Super Bowl town there is, just because of the proximity of everything. Man, absolutely have a blast there. Is there I know this is a hard question to gauge, but just from the vibe and just from what you've seen either in Radio Row or around town, does it seem like the Chiefs have the bigger contingent of fans? I mean, they've been there year after year, or is it the Eagles whose fans are obnoxious and loud and, coming from the Northeast and they're kind of hell bent to get a little revenge because they lost this game 2 years ago. Is there any vibe as far as, does it feel more Chiefs or Eagle heavy there?
You know what? I've gotten a good mix of everything. I will say when we went to opening night, obviously the fans are allowed to kind of come in the stadium, and most of them were on the lower deck. When the Eagles came out, there was big Eagles chants. When there was Chiefs come out, there was big Chiefs Kingdom chants. All the fans were flocking in. So there's been a bit of a mix. I will say at Media Day today, I did see a few Eagles guys walking around. The dude that does all the face paint for the Eagles, that guy that does that whole thing, spikes his hair. I saw him walking around. There's a bit of a mix. I will say that when we were at opening night talking to all the players, they did seem really, really confident that they were a different team with Saquon. So I will say that there has been a bit of a mix, but the Eagles definitely seem confident. They definitely come in and made their presence known. I saw a clip of a Chiefs reporter that was trying to do something up for the Chiefs, and some reporter from the Eagles came in and chanted "Go Eagles" in the Chiefs reporter. So there's been a bit of a mix. So I will say there is a good crowd everywhere. But I mean, it's pretty funny because there's media that are walking. I don't know if they're media necessarily, but people walking around in Saquon and Hurts jerseys. But it's been a pretty fun experience. I will say it made for a good matchup coming media. Not that Washington wouldn't have been a good matchup. I would have loved to watch Jaden Daniels, but having the superstars that is Saquon and Jalen Hurts and Mahomes and Kelsey, it makes for a really fun. I'm seeing all the comments now. It's made for a really fun Super Bowl media because I will say a lot of people wanted to come in and see this matchup, and New Orleans is an amazing spot for it. I couldn't have asked to be at a better spot to experience just not just the city, but Radio Row. There's really nothing like it.
George, any problems or complaints coming out of either team's camp about facilities or setup? I mean, I remember there was a little rub between the Chiefs and 49ers last year as the Niners were, handed an inferior training facility in UNLV's facility while the Chiefs were allowed to practice at the Raiders' brand new headquarters. Where are these teams set up? And is there any complaining in the early buzz running up to the Super Bowl that one team feels like it might have gotten the shaft over the other's ability to prepare for the game?
You know what? I'm not 100% sure, but I will say that one of my friends is a writer. So I do majority writing too. And he wanted to write a story about how New Orleans is kind of a distracting city when it comes to the Super Bowl. So similar to Vegas, how it can be very distracting. So he was asking a lot of the players, all this media comes and you're in New Orleans. Is that distracting during a week when you're trying to prepare for such a big game? And most of the guys were saying that New Orleans is an amazing city. They treat them really well. We were walking by their hotels and they're guarded by the army. I mean, literally FBI trucks and army guys that are literally surrounding their hotels. So they get the best treatment possible. I can imagine that New Orleans has treated them very well. I don't think there's any mix of. I would imagine they're all practicing at Tulane. That's one of the players. Yeah. I think it might have been Mahomes that said, we're all practicing at Tulane. They have treated us very nicely so far. So I believe that they're all getting very equal treatment. If something were to come out, I'm sure we hear about it. I know they're all professionals though, and
Mahomes isn't walking around the French Quarter wearing a Luka Doncic jersey crying, is he? I mean, he's a big Mavericks fan.
He is a big Mavericks fan. I will say it's funny that you asked that. As my friend who's a videographer asked the Luka Doncic question, he got there very early, and he's like, "What is a question that's going to do really well?" And we're all ASU students, we're young, and he asked him, you're a big Mavs fan. What's your opinion on Luka Doncic? And it got all over NFL media. And I think he said that he was sad, but he's happy for him at the same time. But that's all we've talked about all week. I mean, it's kind of crazy that we're at the Super Bowl, and here we are talking about NBA news all week because it's the biggest trade that I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Yeah.
So it's pretty funny how it's kind of taken over Super Bowl media week is all the trades that have gone on this week. But at the same time, trying to stay focused on the game. But that was one of the questions that I heard asked to a few different players about, what do you think about the Luka Doncic trade? Everybody has their own agendas on Super Bowl media week. I heard a lot of very interesting questions. I think somebody asked Saquon about his hair products and how he gets ready in the bedroom. So there were a few different interesting questions that I heard throughout media week. But yeah, definitely made for a good week so far.
George, tell us a little bit about what you think about this game. I kind of like the Eagles. I mean, I just think the Eagles, it's their time. I think their defense is better than Kansas City's. I think it's really hard to win 3 in a row. And yet I was looking at some numbers last night about, how bad Jalen Hurts is under pressure and how much pressure Spags is likely to be able to dial up here. And so I don't know. I mean, to me, it's a coin flip game. I love Mahomes and Reed more than Hurts and Sirianni, but I kind of like the Eagles team, including both sides of the line of scrimmage, maybe a little bit better. I kind of think this might be a low scoring game. The last one was more of a high scoring game. What do you envision? I'm leaning Eagles, but I could be convinced otherwise. Do you have a lean?
It's funny that you say that because when you look at the statistics, it's really funny is that the Chiefs weren't really all that good this season when you look at the stats. I mean, they found ways to win games. They had less yards per game than the Cowboys did with Cooper Rush under center. So they really weren't all that explosive this year, whereas the Eagles, I think, prevented the most yards per game in the entire league. So the Eagles are a great defensive team, and Chiefs on paper have found ways to win games, but they really haven't been the Chiefs of years past. But at the same time, it's just so hard to root against Patrick Mahomes, similar to how it was always against Tom Brady, but then he always found a way to win the game. And that's just how the Chiefs have done it all season. So it's really hard to root against the Chiefs just because they found, winning teams find ways to win games, losing teams find ways to lose games, and the Chiefs find ways to win games. The Eagles are a different team than in years past. I do think it'll be a low-scoring game, like you said. I think the Eagles just took another step defensively this year. Of course, getting Cooper DeJean and Quinion Mitchell in the offseason. And same thing with the Chiefs. I think they'll find a way to slow down Saquon. I think they'll find a way to slow down that passing offense that really hasn't been all that good this season. Saquon has really taken this team to another level that it needed to after last year's early round loss. So I would lean Eagles, but it's so hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes. He just really does find ways to win games. It was kind of funny. All the questions that were being asked during media day were, "How are the refs helping you?" Guys that were trying to get clicks, asking Kelsey if he sends Christmas cards to the refs, all that kind of stuff.
That's
So it was
awesome.
pretty funny. It was pretty funny, but I would have to lean Eagles, but it's tough because Patrick Mahomes will likely find a way to at least stay in the game, if not win the game.
It's
Yeah.
funny. I feel like the defenses almost cancel each other out. We're looking at sort of the same thing. Um, who do you want to bet on? The best quarterback in the world or the best offensive line in the world? I think that's what really,
The hottest running back. Yeah.
Yeah.
and the hottest running back in the world behind the best offensive line, the biggest offensive line I think we've ever seen as well. When I was walking around, George, at last year's Super Bowl, I did notice there was an upped presence in student radio stations that I had never seen before on Radio Row. I love that that's happening. I loved student radio when I was in college. Tell me a little bit about what your station is doing there. How many other student radio stations are around you? Did you get your own table? Have they given you your own like little neighborhood on the road to set up
Yeah.
in and hang out with? It's awesome. I would have loved the opportunity to cover a Super Bowl when I was in college. I think it's awesome that you have this opportunity.
It's an amazing opportunity beyond belief. I mean, I really couldn't imagine. I mean, even a few months ago that I'd even be in a position to be here covering student radio. In the past, I've had the benefit of helping my dad out, but this is something that I feel like I've kind of done myself, and that makes me really happy to be here. It makes me
Yeah.
feel really special, and like I've kind of made it in a way that I'm making progress, and it feels really good. But yeah, it's our radio station. It's Syracuse, and then it's Etica, I think is how it's pronounced. But it's really cool. We've had the chance to talk to all the other student radio stations, and of course Syracuse does it like no other. I mean, when we were in Arizona, even they had a Syracuse table out there. So
You know
all the
what?
other
You
student
know
radio,
those Syracuse guys, they ain't shit. They didn't
I
invent
know ASU does it
coverage
better.
for-
ASU
God,
does it better, and
Syracuse.
we're starting to learn that. But we have our own table, and we've had a lot of really fun guests on. I think we had Kurt Schilling on yesterday on the earlier show. He was a really fun guest. We have a few other guys that are coming on today. A few content creators, guys that have like 300K across their different social medias. One of them that actually went to ASU and graduated from Cronkite in 2023. That I'm really, really excited to go and do that interview. So we have our own table. I think we were allowed 4 different week passes, and then I've had the benefit of getting a few day passes from a few different sources and been able to help out. But yeah, we have the early show. We have 2 guys that go on the early show, and then we have 4 different guys, including me, that go on the 2 to 4 show, New Orleans time. And it's really an incredible opportunity. I mean, they let us do everything. They let us get out here and cover the Radio Row for our school, and that's what else can you ask for at my age to be able to get this experience? And I can say that I've done this for the rest of my life. I mean, we were sitting yesterday like, do we go to this media party? We're like, how often are we going to be in New Orleans at Radio Row?
Yeah.
Here at the Super Bowl. So of
You're
course we
too
have to go to
young. You're too young to be jaded yet. So
Exactly.
just enjoy
Just
it all.
go. Just
Enjoy
go.
it
Yeah.
all.
I would say to take a pen down. We're going to give you a little list right here before you leave. Things you have to do before you get out of there. Okay. And there's also there's the New Orleans lesson to be learned. Okay. So there's regular prices, and then there's New Orleans prices.
Yeah.
And then there's Super Bowl week New Orleans prices. And let me just give you a little hint how you get around Super Bowl week New Orleans prices. You're going to go everywhere. They're going to give you a price. You have to repeat that price back to them sounding indignant, and then you'll get the real price. So it kind of goes like this. You go into the lobby of the hotel, you get a newspaper, remember those things, and a drink and a bag of chips, and they say, that's $17.19. And you go, $17.19? And then they go, oh, excuse me, sir, that's $7.09. I apologize. Oh, no problem. Then you go on your way. Try that behavior the rest of the week. It will save you some money. Have some fried alligator. It's worth doing.
Koshan.
Go to Koshan if you can. Koshan, which is a phenomenal restaurant. Are you 21 yet?
I am. I turned 21 January 3rd, so
Oh, look
earlier
at
last month.
you.
So it
Look
worked
at
out
you.
perfect. It
Oh,
could not have been more perfect timing.
so
And
there you go. You have to go to you got to go to Pat O'Brien's. Have you been to Pat O'Brien's yet?
you know what? My dad was telling me that just yesterday. He said, "You have to go there. You have to go there. You have to go there."
Get a
And
hurricane, go to the piano bar.
we are
Yeah.
making that a priority tonight. We finally have a
Yes.
free night tonight after all the commotion the last few days. We are making it a priority to go there tonight.
Yes. You have to go to Pat O'Brien's. You have to have a beignet. Have you had a beignet yet?
I have. Oh
Okay.
man, they
Oh,
were giving them out for free at the media
yeah.
party yesterday. We made a little content out of it. All of us trying it for the first time. They were
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
They were
You got to
amazing.
get a little gumbo, maybe a little Satiran's gumbo in you. They served it in the media center in Super Bowl 47. I don't know if Satiran's is there, but the gumbo in New Orleans is spectacular. So it has to be.
Especially at a restaurant called Herb Saint. So if you can make it to Herb Saint, the best breakfast in New Orleans is out in the warehouse district. It's called Archifalaya. Go to get breakfast at Archifalaya. Don't go to a strip club. Not this week. Wait, you want to talk about price points that are going to chase you away. Don't do that and make it all the way down to the end of Bourbon Street. Go to Lafitte's, the longest operating has not closed bar in America. They didn't even shut down during Katrina. They stayed open. So go to Lafitte's all the way at the end of Bourbon Street. Then when you get to the end of Bourbon Street, go to Frenchman Street. Frenchman Street is better than Bourbon Street. There you go.
Yeah, I'll say this too. There's also a bar that rotates, like
the Carousel Bar.
What's that?
The Carousel Bar.
The Carousel Bar.
Yeah.
The Carousel Bar is definitely kind of a cool spot as well. But hey, man, we're gonna let you go, and we appreciate you jumping in. Possibly, if we can do this again on Friday for a segment, we'd love to. I'll send you the links, and dude, nothing but good thoughts. Take care of yourself. Be careful. But man, if the question is should we or shouldn't we, the answer is we should.
We should go do it. Make bad choices, make good choices and bad choices all at the same time. And if anybody
again, if your friends say, should we not? We should.
We should.
If anybody asks, just tell everyone you go to LSU. You'll get hooked up. I'm at LSU.
There you go. And if you find love, hey, you know what? It was meant to be. George, have a great time down there, brother. Thanks for your Super Bowl correspondence. Once again, shout out your radio, your media affiliation.
You got a YouTube channel? Yeah. Promote it away.
Blaze Radio ASU will be on from 2 to 4 Central Time. And then follow me on Twitter at Gion Media. I'll be posting media all week, all my different experiences, all my pictures, all my videos, all there. I've been trying to, push out all the content while I have the opportunity to do it. But I appreciate the time. Always happy to come on with you guys. Hopefully I'll see you guys Friday. Talk then.
Sounds good. The great George Lund in the house.
I mean, it's like we've done our own caboose pistol. I feel really good about that.
That was awesome.
That was great. How awesome is that? How great of an opportunity for a young man in college to go to a Super Bowl with media aspirations, to get to work a radio row. He will learn more about the business that he has chosen to go into in the next 72 hours than he will in 4 years of media training in college. He is about to go through the grad school. And that's just awesome, man. I'm so happy for that young man.
Yeah, seriously. Very, very, very cool. A once in a lifetime experience. And, to see the enthusiasm in his face, to hear it in his voice, and just, cover an event like this. And, the one thing about Super Bowl week, if you do get there like he did probably on Sunday, and, it starts to build, you can start to feel every day there's more people there on Tuesday. There's more people there on Wednesday. All of a sudden you look up Thursday and it's like, whoa, this place is packed. And it just keeps getting more and more crazy until game time. And New Orleans is the best city to walk around in, the best city for the Super Bowl. And we wish George
watching, Larry, the people watching. I mean, absolutely. You could just sit down and watch the entire world walk past you in about 10 minutes. It's such a great town. Such a great town.
No question. We got a lot to get to this morning, though. We do want to talk a little Super Bowl. We want to talk a little hoops. We want to talk a little Niners. There's a bunch of different things out there. One of the interesting, I think, things that I saw today on the Niners is from our friend Chase Senior. Who, as you just referenced, is at Chat. Chat Sports is there, and he put out a tweet earlier today, and it's actually a video and a tweet. But I'll share it. I'll share the screen, and we don't have to listen to necessarily the video, but we can look at the tweet. It's a pretty good little tweet he has as far as the 49ers offseason, and he's projecting or suggesting these free agents. He says, as I'm walking around the great city of New Orleans, I just put together the perfect 49er free agency plan. And he says, sign center Drew Dahlman, re-sign the great defensive tackle himself, DJ Jones, sign linebacker Jamian Sherwood, and there has been some rumors this week that Sherwood could be coming to the Niners. Re-sign DJ Reed, who once upon a time, Damon, was a fifth-round pick by the Niners out of K-State, and signed Javon Holland, who went to Bishop O'Dowd, University of Oregon, now playing for Miami. That would give them a safety, a corner, a linebacker, a defensive tackle, so 4 defensive players and 1 center. And with, let's see, I guess really every one of them has either a tie to either the Niners, Robert Saleh, or the Bay Area. What do you think? Drew Dahlman, DJ Jones, Jamian Sherwood, DJ Reed, Javon Holland. I love that list.
So I'm going to chalk this up to either great minds think alike, me and Chase, or Chase maybe watched a show that I did yesterday, because here was my yesterday's show, Larry. I basically said there are 3 names that every single 49ers fan is talking about or thinking about right now. Myles Garrett, because that name just got thrown on the heap, and it's a very interesting player who every team in the NFL would want to add. Cooper Kupp is obviously about to be moved on from, and even though he's not going to be a free agent, there's a trade there. I don't think the Rams are trading Cooper Kupp, even though he would be perfect for the 49ers. I don't think the Rams are going to do that. Then I talked about how Dre Greenlaw, I think, has to be the re-signing priority for the 49ers, especially with Matt Mayoko saying that the Rams could be very interested in paying Dre Greenlaw for his services. So if anything, you've got to pay him because you want him as a player, and he's probably worth a slight overpay just to prevent him from being a Los Angeles Ram. But there are, Myles Garrett is a price too far. Cooper Kupp is not going to be traded to the 49ers unless the Rams are totally out of options, which they won't be. Dre Greenlaw, again, I want him back, but if you did walk away, hopefully he wouldn't go to the Rams, and at the Achilles injury, I guess I would get it for $16 million, and that brought me to the $1 amount I don't even want thought about. I want the player in here, and that is Drew Dahlman. Drew Dahlman, at the age of 27, is probably going to set the market of center free agency. He's probably the best available, and he's the right guy to make the 49ers a playoff team again next year. He protects Purdy. He stops the pressure coming right up Purdy's lap. He is specialist in the run zone blocking scheme. It worked well in Atlanta. I don't want a rookie center calling out protections. You need to upgrade Brendel. Drew Dahlman is the one and only free agent signing that the 49ers should make if they could only make one, Larry.
Interesting. Invader 49er, pretty sharp guy, says Poona Ford over DJ Jones. Okay. Trevon Moehrig from the Raiders over Javon Holland. I think Moehrig is probably going to be the highest rated safety in free agency, so that's probably not realistic. Poona had a great year for the Chargers. He had a real bounce back year. I personally, I just think that people are misreading this situation. I not you, but I think others, just because I really don't envision this being a big free agent off season for the Niners. I think they're going to re-sign Purdy. I think they're probably going to pick 2 guys. That would be my guess. I think they're going to sign.
I would like
2 free agents.
Purdy, re-sign Dre Greenlaw, add Drew Dahlman, draft the rest.
Yeah, I think re-signing Dre Greenlaw is going to be, something that the Niners are all about. I know Fred Warner wants to give some money back to make sure that that happens. So I think that probably will happen. But I would say that the Niners' best plan free agency wise is to copy what Green Bay did last year. Green Bay went and they upped their team, they improved their team, but they only really went for two free agents, but they were two really good ones, right? They got Xavier McKinney, a safety who had a great year for them, and then they got Josh Jacobs, and so they added two real big time players. I could see the Niners doing the same kind of thing. Like maybe you re-sign a Greenlaw, you sign Drew Dahlman, and you sign T. Higgins, something like that. And you go from there. I don't, even though I love DJ Jones, I just think that this draft is so deep on the defensive line that I don't think you have to go for Poona Ford or DJ Jones or any veteran. I think you can I think this is an opportunity this year to rebuild the D-line in the draft. The draft is so incredible for the D-line this year. There's so many great players that it should be pretty easy to do. So that's the route I would go. Two free agents of note. Give me one offensive lineman. I think Drew Dahlman does make a lot of sense. Though I do like some other centers in this draft, but Drew Dahlman would be a great one.
I just don't want a rookie calling out protections. I really, and I know that Kyle.
You don't have to have that though. You don't have to have your center call protections. You could have somebody else. I just know that
Kyle Shanahan, and Dominic Pooney obviously just sort of blew this up, but Kyle Shanahan doesn't trust offensive rookies pretty much across the board. Get him someone that he trusts.
And then defensive, and then they as far as wide receiver goes, I know that a lot of people think T. Higgins is too expensive for the Niners, and I can understand that. But
what do you think his number is going to be, Larry? He's at 32, 35, right?
32, 35 a year.
I mean, if Brandon Ayuk is a $30 million a year wide receiver or $20 million a year wide receiver, T. Higgins is making cash.
I don't know if he's getting that much. I would say it would be less than that. But either way, I think the 49ers, probably should, kick tires on what it takes. Why? Because they don't have a receiver, and it's not a good receiver draft. I mean, they don't have their receiving room is it sounds good, but it's really not that room. I mean, the fact of the matter is my buddy's a realtor. He told me this week that Debo put his Morgan Hill home on the market just like in the last 10 days. So Debo, the idea that Debo could be dealt, I would say is likely. And then Ayuk has got a PCL, ACL, meniscus deal. The odds that he's back before Thanksgiving are not good. The odds that he's back this year at anything close to what he even was this last year, let alone 2 years ago, are not good. So, I personally, if you don't have Ayuk, you don't have Debo, what are you looking at? You got Pearsall, Cowing, and JJ. I mean, you're not probably winning the Super Bowl with Pearsall, Cowing, and JJ as your top receivers, and it's not a good receiver draft. The Oregon receiver is great, but he's tiny. He's like 150 pounds, and Teteroa McMillan probably is going to go in front of the Niners. I don't think they're going to take Luther Burden at 11, so they're up against it, and they're going to need a big-time receiver, and maybe so going for Higgins, I think actually makes a lot of sense.
It does make sense, but what is Debo Samuel's status on this team? What does Kyle Shanahan really think of this guy? I mean,
he loves him, but I think he might trade him.
Right. I do too. And I think that you talk up a player at all times, especially if you're trying to trade him or build up his confidence or whatever. I mean, what is said publicly about these guys and what is happening behind the curtain is probably two totally different things. I just don't think that they can afford to walk away from Debo without a clear upgrade. You can't have a maybe replacing Debo. I'd rather have Debo than the maybe, right?
Well, I mean, I agree, but he's also getting worse. I personally, I am become deaf destroyer of words. Says, what do you think of Garrett Wilson? would he command less? Well, no, he's not a free agent. He's a trade candidate. So you'd have to trade. Yeah, he's still in his rookie deal. So yeah, it would be a whole lot less. But because of that, you'd also have to pay a whole lot more as far as draft pick compensation. But there's a lot of talk the Jets are going to move him, and we know Robert Saleh knows him and probably likes him. So Garrett Wilson, I think, would be a phenomenal get. In fact, that to me makes even more sense than T. Higgins because, I think the Niners probably could trade some collection of 25 and 26 draft picks to the Jets for Garrett Wilson, and probably should because he is the kind of 4-3 wide receiver. I mean, the Niners need to add really a receiver that can run. Do they need a receiver that can also run some routes? Yeah, they do in an ideal world, but they really do need that receiver that can run. And Garrett Wilson is sub 4.4. So he would definitely check the box, man. He would definitely give them he would be their most dynamic offensive weapon. I would be all about trading for Garrett Wilson. In fact, I would say trading for Garrett Wilson would be at or near the top of my list as far as wide receiver. How do I deal with wide receiver this offseason? Because you're gonna have to battle like crazy. From what I've heard, the Rams may go after T. Higgins, and that's why they want to move Cooper Kupp. So
if you're the Jets, why are you doing that deal? I mean, you're going to have to.
He wants out, and they're frustrated with him.
You're going to have to come over the top.
Well, they're shopping him. I mean, it's out there. So, he's, we'll see. We'll see. I would say it's going to take probably 2 day 2 picks. I don't think it's going to take a first round pick, but I think it's going to take, a couple 2s or a 2 and a 3, 3 and a 2 over the next 2 drafts, something like that. And I think that's doable. That's doable. I think that's also, I think, a pretty fair trade. So we'll see, but there aren't a lot of options. I mean, there's Stephon Diggs and Higgins in free agency. Then you could take a dramatic step down. And I like some of these speedy guys. I like Tutu Atwell. I like Rondale Moore. I like McCole Hardman. But you know what? They're more complementary type receivers. And if you're gonna trade Debo, and if Ayuk is not going to be able to be Ayuk next year, next year cannot be another year of, well, it didn't come together. I mean, you just won 6 games. You were the Super Bowl favorite. The Niners don't want to just get back next year. They want to get back and get in the playoff mix and get back to the Super Bowl. I mean, they're looking to get it all back next year. And I don't know that you can get it all back by adding Rondale Moore or get it all back by, the best receiver you add all off season is Tutu Atwell. I mean, he's a speedy guy and that speed helps, but when you look closer at the Niners, they may need a much more significant player than just what's available in free agency. And so, we'll have to see if they can. The draft is not going to provide answers this year, a wide receiver, most likely.
Darius Slayton, I'm looking at some sort of reclamation projects here that are NFL wide receiver free agents. Keenan Allen at the age of 33. Would you be interested in Keenan Allen?
No, not really.
Chris Godwin coming off that dislocated ankle is, if you could tell me that ankle were right, I'd be interested in a little Chris Godwin conversation. Amari Cooper is a guy who, was traded to Buffalo to do big things, and then in the AFC title game did nothing.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Amari Cooper, I think he proved that, wasn't up to it. I mean, he wasn't very good. He wasn't very good with Buffalo. I mean, Khalil Shakir was much more impactful than he was.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing. And you're just adding another, yes, good hands, but foot speed does not improve the overall foot speed of the core. And that's what you need to do. You need faster wide receiver core for sure. I saw that the 49ers are already having player interviews. It's a little early in the draft process to sit down and have player interviews. I saw that they met with Wake Forest offensive tackle Devontae Gordon, who is, a top 10 ACC level offensive lineman. He's more of a day 3 pick though. And it means the 49ers, I don't know if they're giving us a little window into their strategy where they're going to try to go defense early or, a little razzle dazzle early and then come back and looking for offensive line depth late. But for them to have among their first interviews, Devontae Gordon, who is a 6'5", 315-pound tackle from Wake Forest, kind of interesting that they're talking to him, and maybe a little insight into how they're thinking about this, looking for that Dominic Pooney later in this draft.
Well, I mean, the Niners have to find. They got a bunch of needs. I mean, there's no question about that. And it's funny too because a lot of people, you'll do these mock drafts, and sometimes you'll have a bunch of guys in the mock draft because of trade downs and this and that, and invariably you'll get the same kind of idiotic response, which is the 49ers don't need 18 rookies or whatever. And it's like, it sounds like you're intelligent because most teams don't have 18 rookies, and you probably repeated that from Matt Mayoko or Matt Barrows or somebody. But the reality is, yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. Whether they need 18 rookies or 18 free agents or 18 whatever, just do we need to count? We'll count.
Well, here's the thing.
The Niners need a quarterback. They need a running back. They need a wide receiver. They probably need at least one tight end, maybe two. They definitely need two offensive linemen. That's 6 right there. Okay. I actually think they need 2 tight ends, so it's more like 7. So you need like 6 or 7 players on offense. You need a return guy. You need a kicker. So you need a couple guys on special teams. So 6 or 7 guys on offense, a couple guys on special teams. Now we're at 8 or 9. Okay. Now let's go to defense. I think you need 2 defensive tackles and 1 defensive end at least.
Yeah, give me 3 defensive linemen at the very least. Give me a linebacker.
At least. And maybe more. I would be okay if they drafted 5 defensive linemen. But it definitely at least minimum 3, at least 2 linebackers, a free safety, and a couple corners. That's 8. So you have 8 needs on defense. You got 6 or 7 needs on offense. You got 2 needs on special teams. Do the math. Yes.
Well, what you need as much as
49ers need a lot of players.
You need these rookie contracts. That's what you need.
It doesn't have to be. They could be veteran minimums. I mean, it could be like, somebody said maybe Joe Flacco or Case Keenum or somebody as a backup. Fine. You don't have to draft every single need, but you have to. Those are real needs, though. Those are real needs across the board. I wanted to show one other thing here, is that there's a list that you guys ought to keep track of. And it is the 49er. Oh, here it is. The 49er tracker. Steph Sanchez, who's on X at Steph49K, keeps up with this Google document that she has, right? And I guess I could share the screen on this too. Here we go. So this is this document that she's got attached to her Twitter. And it has all these different players that the 49ers, it's a database that says who the Niners met with, what position they play, what school they went to, what conference they're in, who reported it initially, the date, and then if there was like some person, like I had Ryan Fowler on yesterday, and he obviously reported some of these meetings. And these are all players the Niners have met with. So just in the last, here's the last, let's say 10 to 12 right here at the top. It keeps going up, right? So the guys at the bottom, they met with at the Hula Bowl, which was first.
Yeah, Ryan Fowler is the guy who I got the Devontae Gordon story from. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly. He had that. So, and there's a number of interesting guys that the Niners have already met with. Just a couple of them that are super interesting, in my opinion, are this guy right here, Kyle Kennard from South Carolina. He was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, in a conference with all kinds of great athletes. He's an edge rusher from South Carolina who played in a 2-point stance. He was kind of a stand-up rusher, but he's a beast. He's like 6'5", 6'6", 250, and he just is an absolute game-wrecking pass rusher. Kyle Kennard. So that name is really, really keep in mind. And then if you go down a few spots to this one right here, I had Oluwafemi Oladejo. I asked Guy Haberman. I did a stream with Guy about whatever a month ago, and I say, hey Guy, you've been doing all these college football games. You get an up close look at all these players. Is there a player or two all year that really stood out to you as like, wow, I'd love to see that guy in the pros? And he's like, Oluwafemi Oladejo. And the Niners met with him twice at the Senior Bowl. He was one of the best outside rushers at the Senior Bowl. He used to be a middle backer at Cal. He transferred after 2 years at Cal to UCLA. The first year at UCLA, he played middle backer. This last year, he played defensive end. He's 260 pounds on a 6'3" frame, and he's just an absolute game-wrecking pass rusher. So there you go. If they wind up getting Kyle Kennard or Oluwafemi Oladejo, they've already met with these guys, and they're incredible. Absolutely incredible pass rushers, edge rushers, not interior guys, but two of the best edge rushers in the entire class. And the Niners have already met with them.
And I'm wondering how these meetings are identified, who decides to bring in who, and how many you're allowed to bring in, and so on and so forth. And this is, back to, we started the show talking about Josh Williams, who is the 49ers director of scouting and football ops, and he's interviewing for the Jaguars general manager job. We talked about his rise through the organization. And I wanted to talk about this with you, Larry, because you're a scout at heart. You love watching film. You love trying to find the guy. And I just think it's interesting. You learn about all the different levels when you just look at Josh Williams's path to becoming the 49ers director of scouting and football ops. He started as a pro personnel scout from 13 to 16. After that, he gets promoted to the 49ers national football scouting representative, where he becomes an area scout. Then he gets promoted to national scout in 2002 before being slipped over to the big chair, the director of scouting and football ops. So, when you're sitting down to decide, we're going to interview this tackle from Wake Forest, how does that process start? Is it the area scout that then calls the national scout that says, bring this guy in, and then the director of football ops says, yeah, fly him in? Let's peek behind the process a little bit. Just how the information moves up and down the chain.
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, John Lynch, when I say a couple weeks ago, right around towards the holidays, like between Thanksgiving and New Year's, the 49ers have a lot of their draft meetings. And what they do is, when the college football season ends, they fly a lot of their guys in, or they have them virtually, and they have their post-season draft meetings. And it's when they gather up all the names of guys that they liked on the road throughout the year, and they start to see who's in the draft, who's going back to school, who's staying in the draft. There's junior eligibles, so on and so forth. So you got to take a full account of who's in and who's out. That process pretty much has happened. Then there's, the bowl games and the national championship. So there's college games going on, and you're having your meetings. And in those meetings, you're saying, okay, West Coast regional scout, who do you like? Okay, these are all the guys that I have in my region that are draft eligible. So you're just creating your total board top to bottom. And then you start discussing why you might want to meet with a guy. Hey, I actually got, I met the kid, and I thought he was great, but 3 different coaches and 2 different, people told me that he runs hot. Oh, really? Okay, well, let's get him in a room and ask him some tough questions, and let's see if he, holds up under the pressure or what happens. And so that's a lot of times what happens, and they'll get a guy, they'll have him on the list. Now, when can we talk to him? Well, then you just want to talk to him at some point and check your boxes. So maybe you can talk to him at the East-West Shrine game. Maybe you can talk to him at the Hula Bowl. You can talk to him at the Senior Bowl. Maybe you could talk to him, and all the guys that you don't wind up talking to at those at those places or venues, you may be on their list for, hey, we need to talk to this guy at the combine. Or maybe you want to talk to somebody multiple times because you asked them a question and they were going to get back to you or something like that. Or maybe there's a medical thing, a box that you want checked. Or, maybe there's a controversy. Hey, there used to be, something as benign as, hey man, this guy transferred. And that used to be a big like point of contention. Like,
Right,
hey man, you transferred. Why? And why would you ever transfer? And it always reflected negatively on the player. Nobody ever transferred for good reasons. Everybody always transferred, and it would revealed some kind of weakness. So that used to be a major stop down for the room, and the whole thing would bog down. But now, I would say when I'm going through the draft process, just looking at prospects, I would say 7 of every 10 prospects that I look at wind up playing for somebody else. And sometimes these guys play for multiple places. So now it's no longer necessarily what happened. It's
not
just
taboo. Like, it's no longer an issue of, well, this kid it lacks a discipline that you're looking at. It's different now. It's just, it
doesn't have to be an incident. I mean, it could just be like, hey, man, he lost out to a 5, or it could just even be something like, hey, man, they recruited him, and then the next year they landed a 5-star at his position. And he saw the writing on the wall, and so, he left Auburn and he went to South Carolina. So, I mean, a lot of times these guys are transferring. It used to be you couldn't transfer in conference and all that kind of stuff without sitting out a year. Now you don't have to sit out a year. So anyway, so there's medical questions, there's personality questions, and sometimes there's, something that comes up that you just want an answer to. Some teams don't want to meet with players they want to ultimately draft. I'll give you this for the 49ers. I looked at their list, just, that list that I just showed you. And I went back and I looked at last year's list. And then I went back and I looked at the year before's list. And sure enough, the 49ers in the 23 and 24 drafts combined met with 20 players that they ultimately added. So it is a really good barometer. It's a really good list to look at because there's only so much time between now and the draft. So yeah, there are people back, oh yeah, it doesn't mean anything. Yeah, in and of itself, it doesn't mean anything because you can interview anybody you want. You can interview them for any reason you want. And some teams don't interview players they like. Other teams do interview players they like. So it doesn't necessarily reveal anything. But if you look at the Niners and how they've used it, they have used it with players that they have interest in, that they want to get a little bit more intel on. And so it actually does mean something. When you see the 49ers met with Olufemi Oladejo, that means that they like Olufemi Oladejo. And I say that with confidence because the numbers are there. Last year, I think it was 12. The year before, it might have been 8. But they meet with, let's say, 70 to 100 guys total, top to bottom, at all the different venues. And they're going to draft a good 10% of the guys they meet with. So that's not everybody, but it's still a pretty good barometer.
I mean, I got to tell you, the amount of leap of faith you take to draft a kid that you haven't met with, I mean, that's nuts. I would absolutely want to sit down, talk to anyone that I was about to have a several $1 million investment in. So a
lot of times it's, hey, we didn't meet with him because our regional scout did. So we didn't need to meet with him because our region, or you know what? There might be a regional scout that says, hey, by the way, there were some people around when I was totally, wowed by that performance. And there are people that will connect us to this player. Maybe we should do, or do our due diligence very quietly here because, and then like, let's give you another example. A lot of this stuff is done by the assistant coaches. So like, and some assistant coaches live for it and love it. And what I mean by that, Damon, is like Bobby T, the Niners running back coach. He doesn't just keep up with some of these running backs. He will call them every day. He will literally keep up with them every day. There are multiple running backs like Izzy Abanaconda, who, was one of the guys that the Niners met with 2 drafts ago. Didn't draft him, but then of course added him. And when I asked Izzy about Bobby T, he's like, "Oh yeah, Bobby T. He called me every day leading into that draft, and it's like he had all kinds of dialogue. So some coaches are really, really hands-on in the draft process with the guys they really like. And other times you're trying to play it a little bit cards closer to the vest.
That's why players love Bobby T. And not a single bad word is ever said about that guy because he really connects with people.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this too. When you say connects, it's funny because I was talking to JP Mason earlier this year, and he's like, Bobby, he goes, I wasn't giving Bobby what Bobby wanted. And I'm like, really? What did he want? And he's like, well, I just had a bad attitude, and I just had, I wasn't embracing what he wanted me to embrace, and I didn't look at it the way he wanted me to look at it, and he was hard on me, and so Bobby T is he's a tough coach. He's like that teacher that you learn a lot from, but man, you didn't like him necessarily at first,
right?
Because they just challenged you.
It's not until later, until you become more mature, do you realize how valuable all that was.
Right. Bobby T has a doctorate on running backs, and he's a very, very hands-on coach, but he's a tough coach. And if you dance at the line and you don't do things that Bobby wants to do, he's gonna chew your ass out. And he's going to get in your face and tell you what the color of the sky is in your world.
By the way, I really hope they figure out a way to bring Jordan Mason back. I really do. I like him as a player, man. I don't like the way that he was used last year. I think he needs to come back, man. I really hope that they bring him back. The only other bit of news that has changed since we talked about the Niners on Monday, Larry, little housekeeping. Who says you can't find a job in this league if you got a good reputation, no matter how bad your last stop was? Well, Brian Schneider just proved that again. The Commanders are hiring former 49er special teams coordinator Brian Schneider as an assistant special teams coordinator. So they're not giving him the full job, I guess, but he's going to be there and help out. And this is, make friends along the way. And apparently he and Dan Quinn are boys going back to the Seattle Glory days. And that's probably why Brian Schneider is going to be collecting an NFL paycheck again next year. It certainly wasn't because of what he did with the 49ers this year, but new faces and new places, reuniting with old friends. That's how football works. So Brian,
it's a good old boy. It's a good old boys network. Yeah. It's like, the bottom line is, and I don't know that if this is evil or anything, but people hire their friends. This just in. People hire their friends. We were just talking to George. We were just talking to George Lund, and we were like, "Hey, man, network and do well and meet people and this and that." Why? Because somebody that he meets this week, in New Orleans, could hire him.
Right, might be his boss one day.
We Super Bowl 47 was Niners Ravens. That was, what year was that? 2012, 2013, something like that. We went and we networked. Heck, we went to dinner with Matt Miller, who at the time was working for Bleacher Report, and all those people from Bleacher Report. And at the time, he was at Bleacher Report. Now he's ESPN's main draft guy with Kuiper, and he's graduated beyond that. I just had him on my KMBR show, and it's like I've had his phone his number in my phone for the entire time because I met him in New Orleans. He gave me his number, so so there's networking. You definitely want to network for sure. And you hire your friends. People hire their friends.
It was that trip to New Orleans that got me, Jim Rome fill-in gigs.
Yeah, I mean it's when you meet people face to face, that's usually when you make connection.
It's really hard to hire someone who you've never met, right? No, the person who you've never met is never the choice to hire that guy. So
and these days, by the way, I mean these days more so than ever, especially in radio, people are not doing expensive, time-consuming, exhaustive, we will find the best person coast to coast. Nobody is doing that. Go look at almost every single job. I don't care if it's for the program director or if it's for a drive time host or if it's the head of this or that. They're hiring. Oh yeah, we went with Susie. She's been working here forever, and
the least expensive weekend board op that we can promote is the person who's probably going to get the job.
We're going with Johnny. He's sitting right there, and we're just going to add $10,000 to his pay, and he's going to take on some added responsibilities. Why? Because it's a whole lot cheaper than flying somebody in, paying benefits in their whole deal. Maybe it works out. Maybe they buy into your culture. Maybe they stay for 2 years. Maybe they bolt. That it used to be totally different. Now it's like, hey, people are going to just hire people they know. And, Brian Schneider didn't have a very good year, but he was good in Seattle, and he was with Quinn in Seattle. And so now he gets the job in Washington. Are you telling me that there aren't college football special teams coordinators that are 24 years old, 26 years old, 29 years old that would be better at than Brian Schneider? But but Brian Schneider's got the experience,
right?
So
and
the relationship.
If I got to go argue Brian Schneider's arbitration case, my first point is find me the 49er coach, player, or cheerleader who had a good year. Find who is the one person on this team who we can all agree great year. Since we don't even really know who that is, maybe we shouldn't hold it all on Brian Schneider. That's the arbitration case that he would make to get hired somewhere else. And his boy, Dan Quinn, scooped him up and hired him. Larry, I got to get rolling in about 15 minutes here. We got a really good show coming up at 11. Mark Medina is going to be joining myself and Cyrus as we talk about a very interesting 48 hours here for the Golden State Warriors ahead of the deadline. A lot of Kevin Durant seems to be in the air, so we're going to have Mark Medina join us at an 11 o'clock show, which means I got to get on a quick phone call before that happens, which means we want to thank Sam's Chowder House once again for sponsoring today's show. Everyone, please hit like and subscribe if you would. And I think it's the right time for us to hop into some of these super chats, Larry. But wait, let's see her. Where's the sexy lady? There she is. That lobster roll. I know we were talking a little jambalaya, gumbo. Man, you can put cioppino and paella into those categories if that bowl is just delicious. Get down to Sam's Chowder House. If you can't be in New Orleans this week eating your seafood, do it in Half Moon Bay.
Seriously, get your gumbo. You can get some gumbo at Sam's, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Little gumbo.
Gumbo or jambalaya, they do it. I don't know if it's on the menu every day, but I have seen it on the menu.
All right, let's hit some supers right here. Fuji Simeon says, boo, SI Wildcats. Come on. And then he goes, it's okay, Larry. Reardon destroyed SI in basketball, 73-30. 73-30?
Well, it was 73-30.
Wow, is that true? How bad must SH be then? Because the SI beat SH by like 15, but Reardon beat SI by 43.
Apparently, Reardon's got a squad. People keep on telling me I got to go over to that freaking.
They must.
Got to go over to that gym.
They've always had a really good basketball program. Fuji Simeon 13 says, not looking too far ahead. Hopefully next year, Super Bowl at Levi's. There's no atmospheric river torrential downpour during the game. Would ruin the game in the halftime show.
No, I totally disagree. I hope it is the worst weather that cancels the opportunity to ever bring a Super Bowl back to Levi. No Super Bowl should ever be played again in Levi's Stadium. It's the worst place in the world to host a Super Bowl.
It is a weird deal, though, because last time all Radio Row was at Moscone Center, but the game was at Levi's. But from what I'm hearing, all that stuff is going to be down there. All that Radio Row media stuff. I think it's all going to be not in SF. I think it's going to be in Santa Clara.
That will be the biggest, worst decision the NFL could ever make. And why would a media member want to be in Santa Clara for anything but the game? There's nothing to do down there but go to the game. So that would be a horrific decision, and one that probably would cancel any other possibility of a Super Bowl coming back to Levi Stadium. I mean, it's there.
What's there to do in the city?
A million things more than in Santa Clara.
What, though?
Well, bars, restaurants, hotels.
There's bars, restaurants, and hotels in Santa Clara.
No, they don't. Not that you'd ever want to be at. Not that anyone would want to go to, but that just got
I'm
off.
telling you, man, walking through downtown San Francisco is not people's cup of tea. It is absolutely not. That's part of the reason that guys like Florio, blistered the thing last time, because they stayed on Howard and Second. They walked to the Moscone Center. They smelt the urine and the marijuana, and they were just like, "Hey, this place is roach."
That entire area gets so scrubbed up, sanitized, and clean for the Super Bowl. Florio's bullshitting. He's just looking for attention. There was no puddles of urine to be found around Moscone Center during Super Bowl week. The week before, the week after, good luck. But during Super Bowl week, that's cleaned up.
Fuji Simeon says, "Sorry, typo. I meant torrential downpour." We hear you. We see you. We see you working. Matt says, "Let's say the 49ers' favorite offensive tackle is on the board at number 11, but they have a trade offer which would move their first-round pick to the 2025 range with an added second-rounder. What should they do?"
Do it.
I mean, I would trade back. I'm a trade back guy, because bottom line is, you're still talking about people. I mean, they're rated higher, but doesn't mean it's not like they're, the first round player is somehow a better player, a much better player than the second round player. It could be, but it's not necessarily the case. I would always, in a sport like football, where we've seen teams get to the Super Bowl with 20 guys on IR, go with numbers, go with depth. Fuji Simeon says, "Don't forget to show Po' Boys sandwiches some love." Yes.
We're talking about huge New Orleans fare. Yes. The shrimp po' boy or the roast beef po' boy. Which way do you go, Larry?
Oh, God, the shrimp po' boy is amazing. I've had that a few times. Has a nice little crunch to it as well. Paul Glass says, "Here's $25. Larry and Damon, greetings from San Anselmo.
What's up?
Opinions on drafting Derek Harmon. Looks like the Niners are 2 for 2 on drafting physical freaks out of Eugene. Let's also sign Javon Holland, Bay Area native. Love the show. Go Ducks." Sounds like a Duck graduate. I like Derek Harmon. 6'6", 310. There's a lot of, I'll say this, not just Harmon. I was talking last night with Ryan Fowler about Jeremy Caldwell, who also plays at Oregon, who measured at 342 pounds and looked lightning fast in the one-on-ones. So the Ducks definitely, and between Birch, the D-end, Harmon, and Caldwell, they have 3 just behemoths, and they all move exceptionally well, and you can't go wrong with any of them. So I love them all. I even love the kid Jeffrey Bassa, the linebacker. Super fast, instinctive, leader type player. Love him. And I really love Tez Johnson, even though he's a tiny little player. Nobody could hang with Tez. And, if the Niners want to get a receiver out of the draft, I know he's 155 pounds, but I would draft him. I would absolutely draft him.
Do you think he's a top 20 pick?
Tez, no. Harmon or Tez? Tez, definitely not. Harmon, I don't think is a top 20 pick either. I think Harmon's more like between 20 and 40. That's where I'd go with him. But somebody may overdraft him because he did lead the nation in tackles for loss, Derek Harmon. So there's a lot of good Duck players for sure.
Good category to lead the nation in.
No question. Fuji Simeon says, last one, he says, "How much more expensive will next year's Super Bowl at Levi's will drive prices in Santa Clara during Super Bowl week?" Well, I mean, just everything. I mean, hotels, cabs, everything will be,
Right. It all goes for a premium.
Well, I mean, give you an idea. When we were in New Orleans, I ran into somebody from the NFL who told me that they were renting Tahoes and Suburbans, like hundreds of them, right? That they had rented, and they were renting them out at a rate of $500 per day. Well, I'll say, even then, that is a bloated price. I mean, $500 a day, you can get a rental car for a whole lot less than that.
You can get
if you rented a car here
for about $500.
What's that? Yeah,
So you
for a
can find the
week.
right rental car for a week for $500.
Right. I mean, I'm going to spring training. I'm going to rent a car here and drive down. And the whole thing
You're
is probably,
driving?
yeah,
Whoa.
I want to drive because I want to, it's first of all, it's a lot of fun to do the road trip with the boys. And we'll stop a couple times in
Oh, that's
Southern
right.
California.
You were going down with Kev. You're not just driving yourself.
Yeah, it'll be me, Kev, Ben, maybe my youngest son, depending on his baseball commitments, but because he's got baseball. But
A car full of Krugers.
yeah, we're gonna go down. I would say it's gonna cost. I mean, I think last time it was like $235 to rent like a pretty big car for like an entire week with unlimited miles. It's like $235. Now, if I rented it in Arizona because it's spring training, I'd pay a premium. But
Right.
if you try to rent a car in New Orleans this week, you are going to pay through the nose. Simple as that. And that does it for us. You got a final thought, Damon? Are you ready to make a prediction on the Super Bowl yet, or are you formulating?
I think we got to save it to Friday. Friday, Larry, we will go over our game picks. How about we each come up with a 3-leg parlay that we guaranteed
props.
3-leg prop parlay. Yes, let's each of us have a put the bank on it parlay to offer to the audience. I did see, this is, you want to talk about why people are sick and tired of the Kansas City Chiefs. Did you see that there are 89 different Taylor Swift related prop bets? 89. I guess 1989 is a big song for her or album for her. There are 89 different Taylor Swift prop bets alone dealing with Swift anthem pregame prop bets, whether or not she'll be proposed to after the game, what she'll be wearing, how many times she'll be featured, how many times she'll be shown dancing to Kendrick Lamar's halftime show. It's like they're trying to make us sick of her. I'll say that. They're exhausting her as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, whatever, and I love how the Chiefs. Yeah, I saw Kelsey in media day going, "Hey guys, you media guys, how come you're making this refs thing? Why are you guys leaning into this refs thing?" It's like, because you guys are already the best team in pro football, and you can't play a big game without getting 3 or 4 ridiculous calls in your favor. That's why, sorry. I mean, he doesn't like it because it takes away some shine from them and it's a talking point that I'm sure they don't like. But guess what? It's true. You're getting ridiculous calls. 2 guys collide near Mahomes and it's a penalty.
Right.
I mean, come on. We just saw that in the Texans game.
It's not just the calls that you do get that benefit you. It's the calls that aren't going against the other team to their detriment. I mean, there is something. I really believe that the league has no official from Roger Goodell mandate to rig the Super Bowl for the Chiefs, but there is ample evidence of favor being attained by Kansas City from any officiating crew that is out there. And the refs can get all upset and get their panties in a bunch about it. We got eyes. That's the thing. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I am not a tinfoil hat wearer. But if we had 20 calls to discuss, 19 of them went in your favor, Kansas City. Let's not pretend. There's no quarterback over the last 3 years who has had more interceptions overruled by a PI call than what Patrick Mahomes has benefited from. Not one. That's a big number. By the way, JP from the 510, he's like, Damon, we already got your prediction. Chiefs until someone shows me different. Full stop.
Well, we'll see. We'll save it for Friday.
When
there'll be a reappearance of our Super Bowl correspondent, hopefully on Friday as well. Young George Lund, who made his appearance today. That was kind of fun. Thanks to George
from like behind bars or something.
Yeah. What if all of a sudden he's just like a wreck by Friday? But thanks to George. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to Damon. Thanks to me. Thanks to our sponsor, Sam's Chowder House. Damon, I'll give you the final word before we get out of here and bolt for the door. We got a busy day. I'm
glad to see the sun shining out here today. I was getting kind of sick and tired of that rain.
Nothing but football, guys, from here on out. That's all we got time for. It's Super Bowl time. I do love me some Super Bowl. Let me invite everybody again. If you're not doing anything Super Bowl Sunday, want to hang out with some like-minded people, come on by the Halfway Club on Geneva. We got the whole back room to ourselves, food and drink specials. Hopefully we'll see you there. Thank you so very much for watching. Like, subscribe, and
Put the top down in the Miata. It's a nice one. It's been very rainy here in the Bay. Top down day. We got sun.
There you go. And I forgot to mention, but we are looking for one additional sponsor for the spring training trip. If anybody would like to sponsor, feel free to reach out to me, and we'll see if we're mutually beneficial and if it's a fit. If it is, we'd love to have you as a sponsor for the Krueger Show in the month of March. But that does it for us. Thanks to Damon. Thanks to all of you. Have a great Wednesday. We will see you back here 9 a.m. on Friday for our Super Bowl 59 preview edition of Wake Up.